Welcome back to the Crusaders Coliseum Raid Guide. I'm Splug, and in this video I'll be going over our strategy for the 25-player heroic difficulty of the Anub'arak encounter. If you'd like more information or would like to learn more about downloading this movie, click more info on the movie information box on YouTube to head directly to TankSpot. Also, be sure to subscribe by clicking the subscribe button to the right so you'll automatically be notified as we release movies. This video will show the 2-off-tank method of defeating Anub'arak. For this strategy, Phase 1 and 3 are best handled by tanking the boss between a pair of permafrost patches. To arrange this position, either 2 Death Knights will need to death grip down a pair of frozen orbs to predefined locations, or one will need to be shot down so a second can be death gripped to a location relative to where the first orb fell. We are using the 2 northern orbs to accomplish this. Before even initiating combat with Anub'arak, there is a moderate amount of preparation work which must be done. First, nature resistance and chance should be acquired for the cloak and helmet slots on both off-tanks as well as the main tank. The off-tanks will additionally benefit from using specialized block-heavy equipment in this encounter. Due to the way increased damage multiplier debuffs interact with blocked attacks, the effectiveness of block value is drastically increased for the off-tanks in this encounter. Off-tanks should strive to reach 101.6% combined avoidance and block chance on their character sheet to ensure the level 82 crypt fiends will not inflict unblocked hits. This ensures damage is consistently reduced, rather than risking sudden surges of drastically increased damage. Once the block avoidance threshold is reached, increasing block value into the 3000 point range is ideal. Stamina is a surprisingly poor stat for the off-tanks in this encounter. While the encounter is hypothetically possible and has been completed using Death Knights or Druids as off-tanks, it significantly increases the damage the off-tanks will be receiving, and thus the difficulty of the final phase. Secondly, as groups cannot be altered during combat, you will need to be sure your raid healing assignments are established prior to engaging the boss. As Leader of the Pack and Judgment of Light will be sufficient healing to sustain melee classes, these should all be compacted into the same groups, with tanks to optionally round out the remaining slots in these groups. Ranged damage and healer groups will need to be kept alive by consistent and calculated heal sources such as a Restoration Shaman's Healing Stream Totem or Holy Nova. Be aware that Holy Nova has a tight range, and that groups kept alive by it must be planning on stacking on the same point in the final phase. Vampiric Embrace and Non-Restoration Shaman's Healing Stream Totems may be used as well, but will not be sufficient independently. Use 2 of them for these groups. Additionally, mind that if a Shadow Priest is responsible for keeping a group alive via Vampiric Embrace, they may not be able to use Mind Seer in Phase 3. Custom consumables can prove beneficial as well. All 3 tanks should be using 50 resistance flasks, and all non-tank players can alleviate the load on healers, particularly while learning the encounter, by bringing frost protection potions. Be sure your raid checks their boss mods. If multiple players are promoted, be sure only one of them has a mod attempting to set raid icons, or icons may be lost to conflicting allocation. Old versions of DBM contain a bug where icons are not set on targets when a penetrating cold effect is refreshed. Double check your healer's raid frames allow a display of raid icons. Grid does not by default. Finally, there are several classes which are essential to this strategy. 4-handed protection effects are used over the course of Phase 2s. Body and Soul is greatly beneficial for providing a run speed boost. 1 Death Knight will be needed for death grip in the initial Phase 1 permafrost positioning, and 2 Hunters with Misdirect will greatly facilitate crypt fiend pickups. Nature resistance via either aspect of the pack or nature resistance totem will be absolutely critical in Phase 3, and beneficial during and shortly after each Phase 2. If you use aspect, be wary of the Hunter's distance from other players in the raid, particularly the boss tank. This video clip was pulled from a different raid than the main video, but it will serve to illustrate the crypt fiend pickup. Each Phase 1 will involve 2 waves of crypt fiend spawns. At this difficulty, all 4 spawn locations will spawn 1 fiend per wave, meaning each off-tank will get 2. We used Hunters to misdirect each of the 2 that spawn in the far south, while the off-tanks are themselves responsible for picking up the spawn on their side. Tanks should be wary that the spawns will be slowed by the permafrost as well, and that tanking them deep into the ice patch will leave them out of melee range for a long enough time to risk threat issues. The adds need to be tanked as close to the boss as possible without being in range of providing Spider Frenzy to the crypt fiends on the opposite side of Anub'arak. Each tank will interrupt the Shadow Strike cast on one of their targets while damage player interrupts the other. We coordinated this using an icon on the tank's target only, as the boss mod will claim 5 icons for penetrating cold. As the cast is several seconds long, there is ample time to compensate for a potentially missed interrupt by using multiple interrupt, silence, or stun attacks. The Shadow Strike is always synchronously initiated by all living spiders. Most boss mods now track the expected start time of the next cast. If you wish to prevent the cast entirely by using an area stun on the crypt fiends, this is an effective method as well. We felt using the single target interrupts compensated for mistimed attacks, delayed casts, or stun resists, and made for a more consistent strategy. The first wave of spiders needs to be dead before the second wave arrives at the boss. Between the increased tank damage, difficulty in making fresh target pickups during AE, and casting speed haste from Spider Frenzy, trying to handle 8 crypt fiends at once for more than an instant or two is best avoided. All damage capable of multi-target attacks should make use of it during this first wave. Once the first wave is dead, damage should turn to a full focused burn on Anub'arak. The second wave of crypt fiends can be off-tanked through the remainder of Phase 1 without any negative effects, and the kite scheme showed here for Phase 2 only allows for 2 submerged phases. The encounter's berserk timer is likely to be a significant concern as well. As Phase 1 draws to a close, Anub'arak will need to be moved away from the permafrost. The southwest pullout shown here will give everyone ample time to run clear of the raid when pursued. Damage stays with the boss as long as possible, but be wary of Shadow Strike interrupts. You may need to leave a rogue or retribution paladin near the spiders to kick or stun. Once Anub'arak submerges, damage will turn to the lingering crypt fiends from Phase 1. Melee should be aware that they will be legal pursuit targets and should not move into the permafrost until the first target is selected. Once the crypt fiends are dead, AE can turn to the burrowers to burn them down. Any that lock to the Anub'arak pursuit victim should be death gripped into the raid or shackled until the pursuit target is clear of the ad. The first 2 pursuit victims in any given phase will run due south as soon as they are being followed. Once they reach the south-central area shown here, they will wait for a paladin to cast Hand of Protection on them. Once invulnerable, the player will run to the edge of the fresh permafrost, wait until Hand of Protection has 3 to 4 seconds remaining, and run across it. This ensures no immune time is wasted. The third pursuit victim will need to kite through the remaining time in the submerge phase. This will generally be no more than 10 seconds, but may be longer if a chase was handled incorrectly earlier in the phase. Ideally, the boss will be kited to the side of the double permafrost that was used in Phase 1. Be careful not to break either of those permafrosts. It is better to die to impale than to run through them. Melee players should be in a position to attack Anub'arak as soon as he emerges. Boss threat will not be reset. The absence of a threat reset also makes the second Phase 2 an ideal time to move vigilance to the main tank to provide for free taunts in Phase 3. At 30%, Anub'arak will go into the third phase of the encounter. On or just before the transition mark, all players except the main tank should remove Commanding Shout and Power Word Fortitude to reduce the amount of health Anub'arak regenerates initially, as well as from players who have Penetrating Cold later in the phase. This phase will put a heavy strain on all members of the raid, and is the major roadblock in the encounter's learning curve. As Leeching Swarm will drain 30% of current health on this difficulty, healers will need to let the whole raid drift under 2,000 health, ideally under 1,000. Failing to do this will prevent the damage from meeting the berserk timer. The minor healing needed to outpace the swarm should be designated by group before the encounter begins. Off-tank healing will need to be limited as well. The intent is to hold the off-tanks at roughly the 50% mark as often as possible, but err on the side of survival. The Anub'arak tank will need constant healing throughout the phase. We moved the Holy Paladins just behind the Warrior tank for this phase. As all other healers will have their threat governed by the encounter demanding the raid be low health, the Paladins are almost guaranteed to be targeted by incoming adds. Healing threat may outweigh misdirection, and adds passing the Holy Paladins before the tank will be problematic. The tank needs to be aware of the Paladin's new location, as it will change the trajectory the Crypt Fiends arrive from, and as such may present interesting facing issues to prevent unblocked rear attacks. Each time Penetrating Cold is cast, DBM will place a unique icon on each target. Each icon will have a healer assigned to it, who will need to administer roughly 6,000 healing to that player within 3 seconds, or the combined Leeching Swarm and Penetrating Cold damage will kill the victim. We found it was helpful, particularly while first learning the encounter, to have Holy Paladins assigned to support a symbol by using Holy Shock on the first Penetrating Cold tick, with Beacon of Light on the main tank. Throughout this, each healer needs to continue whatever other assignment they have, such as Holy Novaing their group or tank healing. Members should also try to assist the healers wherever they are able. Anti-Magic Shell, Divine Shield, Ice Block, Cloak of Shadows, and other immunity or damage reduction effects can alleviate the first tick front load or remove it entirely. If the raid is using Frost Protection Potions, damage reduction abilities should be saved for the second time they receive Penetrating Cold. Health Stones can be used as another fallback to protect yourself. Fiends in Phase 3 must be killed in the same way as the first Phase 1 waves. Gather them near the boss and splash down the whole pile. Be sure to call it quickly if either the fiends are too close and granting haste, or too far and not in AE range. If a wave is not completed before the next spawns, it is going to be devastating. As the end of the phase draws near, some boss damage can be gained by abandoning the adds in favor of burning Anub'arak directly. when either there is not enough time remaining for another wave of ads to spawn before the berserk timer, or Anub'arak's health is low enough to ensure he will die before another ad wave, the off-tanks may wish to take the creep fiends out of the permafrost and allow them to burrow. The ads may or may not actually attempt to do so in a timely fashion, but the primary goal is just to kill the boss. At the end of the berserk timer, Leeching Swarm will kill everyone in the room. There is no hope for gradually whittling down the last bit of health while the boss runs from player to player, as anyone not completely immune to Leeching Swarm will die instantly. Thanks for watching this movie. As per usual, feel free to ask questions or add suggestions either on YouTube or in the strategy thread on TankSpot.com. Also, TankSpot donors can download all of these movies in high definition directly from our servers. Click the second link in the movie information box to learn more.